All right. Well, good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Che. I am the program manager here at Big Bear Retreat Center. And today we will be doing a live Q&A session with Diana Winston of UCLA Mindful. And this will be a moment to get some insights about the retreat that Diana will be co-leading here with Booker Leslie and also Vadan, who will be leading movement. So today will be an opportunity to listen to some key details about the retreat. And also, if you have any questions for Diana, just about understanding mindfulness and also specifics about the retreat, you can ask those questions in the chat if you feel more comfortable. Please note that we are streaming this live on YouTube as well as recording this talk and Q&A today. So please move in a way that feels comfortable for you in terms of your camera settings. And again, if you are not asking a question, please be sure to keep yourselves on mute. And yes, otherwise, please find yourself in a comfortable seat and just enjoy a little bit of the Q&A that we are about to get into. So I will lean into our first question. Diana, you're ready?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I will start with what inspired you to teach mindfulness?
Okay, I'm happy to answer. I'm just curious though, of the people who are here, are you going to be on the retreat or you're questioning, maybe you might be interested, just so I get a sense of who's in the room? Would people be willing to just maybe put in the chat what brought you to this Q&A? Do you mind if I just ask that for a moment? That'll just help me with our answers.
So I do see one person asked a question already, and then someone else mentioned that they're not registered for the retreat. We've got Marianne here, some of our divine staff from BBRC also in attendance. Oh, okay, and we've got some more folks hopping in.
Okay,
Okay,
so it seems like I'm seeing at least one person is not registered. I know I see one person. Hi, Sheila. I see someone here who I know is going to be there. And all right, well, I'll just answer generally then. And I'm also wondering, are you okay if we just take like 2 minutes just to breathe together before we go into it? Right.
absolutely.
Okay, so I'm just going to encourage us all, wherever you are, to settle back for a moment and take a breath or two, allowing yourself to breathe and rest and settle. And you might feel your feet on the ground, or I don't know where you are, where you're sitting, but see if you can make some contact with something stable in your body, like feet on the ground or legs on the chair or couch, bed. Notice what's happening in your body right now. If there's any strong sensation, maybe subtle sensation, just letting your body be where it is and noticing what is present for you. And if you check into your emotions or your heart area, what is happening in terms of how are you feeling right now? Is there any particular thing you're feeling, like sadness or anxious or irritated or joyful or excited or nothing? A lot of times we don't feel anything in particular, but just to check in and see what's here. And take a breath, letting whatever is here be here. And noticing how's my mind as we start this interactive part. Just to have how's my mind feel? Is it relaxed? Am I distracted? Am I present? Sleepy? Overcaffeinated? What does mind like right now? See if you can allow all these three areas, body, heart, mind, to just be wherever they are. There's no pressure to be anything other than where you are in this moment. So take one more breath. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they're closed. Okay, thanks. And now, Che, I totally forgot what the question was. So we'll start again.
Yeah, no worries. So the first question is, what inspired you to teach mindfulness?
Hmm. Well, I've been teaching mindfulness a pretty long time, I think about 30 years. And I don't, I didn't start meditating in order to teach. I was meditating and really fell in love with the practice. And over time, I just devoted my life to my meditation practice and spent like, I don't know, years and years in silent retreat. And when I came back from a long period of practice in Asia where I had lived as a Buddhist nun, I got asked to teach. And so I had already done a little bit. So I'd actually been teaching teenagers prior. There's a retreat at the Insight Meditation Society for teens that has been running since the early 90s. And I had been kind of assisting on that every year. And I found that I just loved being able to share the teachings and to teach people to meditate. And there was so much joy in this thing that I was so passionate about, in this capacity that I was developing to share with others. And so I think then when I got formal teaching, which was like in the early 2000s, it just felt like it was something I was born to do. That's my life path.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Diana. I think my next, oh, we have a question, it looks like. Well, let me do this. I have Sheila who's got their hand raised. Sheila, there's one other question that's in the chat first. So let me read this question to Diana, and then we'll do yours next, Sheila. Okay, so Diana, the question I have in the chat is, I enjoy your different meditations. Is there an order or sort of way to listen to the ones, for example, mindfulness, breathing, body scan, loving kindness? Say someone has an hour a day, how would we mix the different types?
Hmm. Well, if you are meditating an hour a day, fantastic. That's great that you have the time to do that. Most people don't, so that's why there's a lot of short meditations. So I'm hoping or assuming that you're listening to our app, which is the UCLA Mindful app, which is free, and we have I have, as you mentioned, lots of different kinds of meditations, and then one of the parts of the app is that we do have thematic meditation. So you can go and look at something that you're interested in working on and then do that meditation. That's usually a longer meditation, like 30 minutes. In terms of combining it, if let's say you have a period of time to meditate, I like having a core practice and then have secondary practices. So my core practice is my mindfulness practice. So I'll sit and I'll practice mindfulness and I'll choose an amount of time. And then I might add something on, like I'll do some loving kindness at the end. Um, so you can be deliberate about it. Like you can say, okay, for the next month, I'm going to do 20 minutes of mindfulness and 20 minutes of loving kindness. Or you might reverse it. You might say, or 5 minutes of loving kindness, or you might reverse it and say I want to focus on loving kindness. Once I did that, once I practiced loving kindness towards myself for a year. And that was my only practice. And the reason I did it was because I felt I needed it. Like there was a lot of self-judgment, self-hatred. So it worked to heal that. And so I made a decision to choose that particular practice. So my point is there's no rules here. Listen to yourself. You can make a deliberate intention to kind of combine practices in a way that would be interesting or useful to you. Or you can see what organically arises. And you might be doing a mindfulness practice and say, okay, I want to actually switch to, oh, there's strong emotions coming up. So I'm going to shift over to an emotions practice. So there's no rules here. No.
All right, Sheila, let's go ahead and have you ask your question. If you'd like to, again, be mindful, we are, recording and we also are on live stream. So if you rather just speak out loud and not have your camera on, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you. Diana, I've been practicing more than I had been for the first years of my practice, and I'm noticing that when I do a focused awareness practice, concentrating on the sensations of the breath, that there is some kind of aversion or over-efforting as I breathe, and it's unpleasant, and I'm trying to understand what is it, and it's a contracted sensation in the abdomen or throat. I'm trying to understand what that is and how I work with it. It's anger or aversion or over efforting. I can't quite figure out what it is.
Yeah, Sheila, that's a good question. And just to clarify for people, I often talk about different ways of having mindfulness occur. So we can have a focused mindfulness. So we do a focused awareness practice that we might focus on something narrow or like our breath. Um, and then there's also, we can be mindful of our thoughts, our emotions. It's not as focused as that, our body sensations. And then there's a wide open, spacious, almost panoramic mindfulness that I like to call natural awareness. So Sheila's talking about the focused awareness practice. So the thing about focused awareness practice is it can get tight. And that's, it can feel like, oh, I'm working really hard to be focused. And there are ways of doing it where you can still do it, but you do it in a relaxed way. But it's not easy to do because our tendency is to want to do, right? And like, I've got to pay attention. So I'm going to give you a couple of options to play with and you try it and see what is helpful. One is Sheila, I know you know the model that I use. So start with a spacious awareness practice, like the sounds or, opening up the sensations awareness of your body, and then allow the breath awareness to come from within that space. So instead of trying, it's almost like a receiving of the breath. And it's pretty interesting when you combine the two. So that's one suggestion. The second suggestion is if you're feeling like you're over efforting, I guess the question I have for you is well, I would say you don't do it. Do a different practice, do a more spacious practice, do some loving kindness, do other things because that one is contracting your mind and being frustrating to you. And the third thing is you said you're trying to figure out what it is, you can definitely use it as an object of meditation. Oh, my chest is constricted, my stomach hurts, and you get really curious about the sensation. But then at that point, don't have it be your anchor because now it's not neutral. So my question I was about to ask for you is why are you focusing? Like why did you make the choice to do that?
I was, well, I had been doing a lot of choiceless awareness, and I had an idea that maybe that was causing me in outside of meditation life to be sort of lose agency, like lose my sense of doing what I wanted to do for myself. And so I wanted to do focused awareness, thinking that might train the mind to get back to some sense of self-agency rather than being pushed and pulled by whatever is around me.
So that's interesting, Sheila. And just for those of you who are unfamiliar with choiceless awareness is when you're meditating and you're just kind of aware of whatever arises. Like, oh, there's a sound, there's a memory, there's a thought, but your awareness is strong enough that you can be present with whatever happens. But what Sheila is pointing to is you're not making any decisions. You're just following how your meditation is evolving, how the moment to moment experience is evolving. So it's an interesting motivation that you're stating. I think so. I would go back to the first one that I said, which is relax, go into a more spacious, restful place, and then let the concentration come from that space. Like let the focusing just happen in a much softer, more gentle way. Don't see if you can stop putting on the gas and just allow a bit more. Let's see what happens. Okay.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Sure.
Okay, so I am going to hop in with another question. Wow, if anyone else, if anything comes up for you as you're sitting and listening, please feel free to either raise your hand or post your question in the chat, and I can read it on your behalf. Diana, there was something you said in the first question I asked that I would love to hear much more about, and kind of ties into another question I have around, what is the moment in your life that sort of happened or transpired that brought you into mindfulness? And you mentioned being a nun. So I guess those two aspects sort of wrapped into one question. Yeah, how did you get to come to be a nun? And if there's a specific moment in your life that, moved you into that.
Okay, so I'm gonna separate them, but they'll come together
Okay.
in the end. The I was after college, I was traveling around in India, and I ended up in Dharamsala, India, which is where the Dalai Lama has the government in exile. And it's a very Buddhist town, and there's a lot of people doing Buddhist meditation, and I was not really interested because I was kind of skeptical. And but everybody was doing it. So there was a little bit of a peer pressure factor. And so I remember going to hear lectures in Buddhist meditation, and I would sit in the back really rudely unwrapping candy bars, like, just really obnoxious. But something got moved in me, and I ended up going on a 10-day meditation retreat. And to back up, I was a very driven person. Like prior to that, I was, I was young, but I was very driven to succeed in school and to gain, get straight A's and to do well in college. And like I was really, really driven and very fearful of like not succeeding or something. And so I'm on the meditation retreat, and the teacher was talking about something that's called the eight worldly winds. And the eight worldly winds is the concept of like there's all these winds that move through life, and they're winds of positive and negativity. So you might have a wind of pleasure, but then you're going to have a wind of pain, and you might have a wind of gain, but then you might have a wind of loss, and then you might have a wind of fame, and you might have a wind of disrepute, and then there might be another wind of praise, and then blame. So it's just these pairs of opposites that come and go through our life like the wind. And the thing is that we're always like running after the really positive one and running away from the really negative one. And then so we're in this constant state of push, pull, push, pull. And the teacher was explaining this. And I heard the teaching and I was like, this explains my life. Like I heard those teachings on praise and blame, and I realized that my entire like operating system was about getting praise and running away from blame. And I just remember that moment, I was like 20 years old and I just started to cry. And then the teacher said, but there is a way out of this. And that is finding a mind of what we call equanimity, a mind of balance that is not disturbed, whatever wind is coming through, positive or negative. And she said the way to do it is to meditate. So that's my origin story. The moment in the monastery in Dharamsala. So that sent me on like, I want to say like for another 10 years of these long meditation retreats. And then at a certain point, I had a teacher who was a Burmese teacher who I'd practiced with in the States. And he invited me to come to his monastery and meditate there for a period of time. And that's when I ended up going to Myanmar, Burma, and ordained as a Buddhist nun. And I did that for a year and I shaved my head and I put my possessions in storage and I wore robes and I didn't eat after 12 noon. And I spent the day meditating all day long from beginning to end of the day, like just walking meditation, sitting meditation, walking meditation, sitting meditation. Don't worry, if you come on the retreat, it's not going to be that hardcore, promise you. Although you will, we import a lot of that, but at the same time, we are much more gentle than what was required when I was in Burma. So yeah, so I lived as a Buddhist nun for a year, and it was extraordinary and like really hard and wonderful, and yeah, every emotion possible. But it was one of the most profound things I ever did in my life. One of the places where I may have learned the most about myself. And it certainly transforms. That goes back to your question, like, how did you get to be a teacher? Why did you want to be a teacher? It was after that I was asked to teach.
Yeah, do you think that you would ever return to a set amount of time or an extended period of time to be at a monastery again?
Well, I have a kid, so it's not very likely anytime soon. I mean, she's getting older, so at some point she will leave, but she's 15 now. But I would definitely really look forward to being able to do long retreats. So most of my life until I had my daughter, I was able to do minimum of like a month a year, sometimes 3 months, and then of course that long year. And I haven't really done that since she's been born. I've done maybe like a week a year if I'm lucky, 5 days to a week. So the thought of going back to having access to long retreats to at least a minimum of a month feels very, very exciting to me. And I know I'm waiting, and I know I knew I made the decision, right? When I had the baby, I'm like, okay, that's it. You're going to put that aside for for another 20 years, but you'll be back to them. But whether I would go into the monastery, I don't think so. I think that's for maybe like in my mind, younger people like who have the energy to deal with the food and the bugs and the living in a different culture for an extended period of time. Yeah. Oh, and just to say, while you're looking at the question, there's so many fantastic places to do long retreat in the United States or in the West. So you can absolutely, like, it's an incredible experience to live and practice in monasteries in the where it originated from in these Buddhist places, but in these Buddhist countries. But you can also, there's Insight Meditation Society, and then there's this like amazing place called Big Bear Retreat Center where you can do like weeks of practice and you don't have to worry about getting sick or tons of spiders or things like that. So.
Yes, Diana, thank you for that. All the things to consider and the many infinite possibilities to deepen one's practice. But thank you for that answer. I always enjoy these sessions in that way because there's always some nugget that a teacher reveals that we wouldn't know otherwise, or wouldn't, especially sitting with you on retreat, we wouldn't get the opportunity to necessarily ask you that, maybe if we catch you at the end of the retreat or something like this. So, such a nuanced and kind of juicy answer to listen to. And I would say for our next question, let's kind of maybe move into more of the retreat. So, who would you say the retreat is for?
Um, the retreat is for anyone who's interested. A couple of things. I do come out of the Buddhist background, but I teach a very secular way. I've been teaching at UCLA for the last 20 years. I know that's one of the questions. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I really want to make these teachings as accessible as possible, and that's my commitment in life. And and so anybody is welcome to the retreat, even if you're fairly new. I've had many people just like listen to meditations on apps and then show up at the retreat and they totally can do it. If you have more experience, it's also, you're very welcome. And it's going to be a pretty small retreat, so we can work it really closely with people. So if you're a more advanced student, we can have some one-on-ones and an opportunity for me to like more closely guide your practice. And if you're new, we're going to just have it's absolutely going to be completely welcoming to new folks.
Okay, thank you for that, Diana. And we have a question in the chat. How many retreats would one need to attend to be considered a Zen master? I'm not sure if you can get that through retreats, but
I mean, I'm not in the Zen lineage, so I don't know, but I think you're asking more like to be a teacher, like a spiritual teacher or something. Uh, Here's what I would go to, the 10,000 hour rule, right? The 10,000 hours, what they say to be an expert in anything. So that means sitting your butt on the cushion for 10,000 hours, which is a lot of meditation time. But that being said, one of the things that I do, that's to be like a mastery at something, right? At anything, it takes a lot of practice. But there are many people who are sharing mindfulness, and I've trained so many mindfulness facilitators who have not 10,000 hours, but have practiced, minimum for 4 years or so, who have gone on at least 2 retreats, who have like a commitment to sharing mindfulness. So it depends kind of what level of teaching you're talking about, but like Zen master, that's hardcore.
okay. I would say for the next one, what are some of the mindful practices that will happen as folks are coming on retreat and sitting with you and Booker and Vadan for this retreat?
Yeah, so we'll do a lot of sitting meditation, and we'll be teaching different things within the sitting meditation. So we'll be teaching basic mindfulness practice. We'll be doing some focus practice. We talked about that earlier. We'll start us off with a more focused practice, and then we'll expand our awareness some in different ways to learning how to use mindfulness to work with emotions, difficult emotions, and pain in the body and thoughts, and then how to do a more wide open, spacious awareness practice. So we'll kind of move through different types of mindfulness. This will be supported by our movement practices. So we're going to do some yoga, have access to yoga classes and qigong classes, which should be great. And then Varan's a wonderful teacher. And then we have also complementary practices where we practice kindness and compassion and joy. So we develop positive emotions. So there's a lot going on, even though it's pretty stripped down and you're just sort of meditating throughout the day. There's a lot of different instruction on what to be doing. Plus, you have the beautiful practice of taking a walk in nature and the support, and you have a work meditation, and there's a lot to do.
Thank you for that. Just for some clarity for folks if they haven't sat, in anything that's similar to Vipassana, just so they have an idea. And also, I think it's really important, something that you incorporate in terms of having the movement. I think that movement is very, very key in terms of moving through our inner world and moving through the mind and moving through the emotions and still being able to find that stillness in those very concentrated focus moments in asana or in qigong or tai chi or something like this. Diana, with the practices that you mentioned for the retreat, are any of these or most of them part of your daily practices, or are there other things that maybe even won't necessarily be experienced on retreat that are currently part of your daily or weekly or even monthly sort of mindfulness and stillness practices?
I teach more or less what I do. But I'm sometimes I'm doing like, and probably my practice is more towards the panoramic aspect of practice that I talked about, just because that's kind of what's evolving or what has evolved these days. I do kindness practice on a regular basis, especially these days where I need to have kindness because there's a lot of things that make me mad. And I practice a lot of daily life mindfulness, which we'll be talking about. Like, how do we bring mindfulness when we're eating? How do we bring mindfulness when we're just walking from one place to the next? How do we bring mindfulness when we're doing our little meditation job? These are really key practices for me because as a mom and as someone who's, has a full-time job, like mindfulness has to be on the go all the time. So that's a big piece of my practice these days.
You mentioned a couple of things that I think are really important too. You mentioned, moments of being angry or just being in the mundane of each day and various moments throughout the day. So how would you say that your mindfulness practices really help, one, with moving through challenges or if there's a lot of tumult or chaos around you?
They help a lot. I mean, I don't know how I would have survived my life without mindfulness. Um, So one of the best things about mindfulness is its ability, well, that we gain the ability to work with our minds. And that means the ability to come back to center when we get anxious or angry or fearful or grieving. So when when something happens that triggers or upsets me or whatever, I have these tools that are in my pocket that I've been practicing a really long time that help me come back to center. And this is just again and again how I just use them on the spot. And sometimes it involves like calming myself down. Sometimes it involves just awareness that I'm having an emotion. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm really, really upset. I'm going to pause. I'm not going to act, right? So oftentimes with mindfulness, we act without mindfulness, we act out of reactivity. Reactivity is acting out of our habitual patterns without consciousness. We just do it. So like I'm in a fight with a family member right now. I just want to be transparent because I've been meditating a long time and I'm still, I'm a human who has all sorts of, you know, preferences, likes, dislikes, and so forth. But anyway, I'm having a fight with a dear family member, and he sent me a really, really obnoxious text last night. And I was just about to text back, I am blocking you, period, and then blocking him. Because I was really upset. And I mean, and by the way, I'm in the right. um, but no, no, no. I mean, we're just in a thing, and then I just paused and stopped and felt into my body and noticed that I was feeling some threat at me, and it was provoking anxiety, and it was late at night and I was tired, and I just went, take a breath. Let's sleep on this. Let's see how you feel in the morning, and don't, because if I did start the blocking, then I was going to get, anyway, it was going to be bad. So I didn't, and at some point I may. But what I'm trying to illustrate for you is that we can use mindfulness in the heat of the moment, in the midst of our lives, when we need it, when we're having a hard time, when we're about to be reactive, when we're feeling hurt, when we're feeling like this is the gift of mindfulness. It gives us this incredible ability to have awareness no matter what is going on. And I was feeling kind of sad in my meditation today, and I was just feeling so sad. But instead of feeling like the sadness was a problem, I could feel the awareness holding the sadness. And it didn't mean the sadness went away, because it didn't go away. But there was something greater than the sadness, and that was the awareness itself. So in that way, we can, life is a lot better. It's a simple way of putting it.
That is a really, really big one. I think because so much of either what we witness or what we hear, experience with others, this stuff has to be so quick or just get to it. And there's so much that can come from you just choosing in a moment to stop and just take a single deep breath. You know, how much you can reset your nervous system just in that moment, and in that resetting and calming you'll have so much more clarity around what could be happening for them, what's happening for you. And yeah, just giving it a moment. I think that could be a benefit even to technology, right? You know, if you're not accustomed to even in the moment saying, okay, listen, I'm going to take a pause and not respond to you right now because of what just got activated for me. And I want to speak to you with a different energy and from a different space. And so technology can also give us that spaciousness too in the moment to just say, all right, let me, because this is going to get really fiery really fast. So thank you for that, Diana. So that was really tangible too, because that's something I think we can all understand very much in a quick moment having disagreement. Before I move on, I just wanted to check in with everyone who's here and see if anyone wanted to jump in and ask a question. So I'll give a moment of pause here if anyone wants to post a question in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question. So yeah, just take a quick little moment here. Okay, well, I will continue forward, but please don't be shy. If something comes up, chat or just raising your hand, and then we can get to your question. My next question, Diana, would be, what are words of encouragement that you would offer to someone who is just beginning their meditation practice? And I would also add to that, even someone who's been meditating for years or for a significant amount of time, but perhaps they're feeling that their practice is not as centered or as grounded as what they become accustomed to.
Mm. I think if you're just starting out, it's a big learning curve, right? So, there are people who meditate for the first time and then they're just like, bliss, but that's pretty rare. Most of us, it's a learning curve. It's a process where you learn the skills, and then you partially in the beginning, it's about like even figuring out how to fit it into your life and trying to get some regularity, and then know, am I doing this right? And just know that it takes time, and that you give it space and time. And if you have a commitment to doing it because you've heard about or understand the benefits, then you stick with it. And as you stick with it, it begins to there begins to be more places of ease, and it starts to become enjoyable. That's wonderful when we're in these grooves where meditation is enjoyable. Now, when a person has been practicing a long time and or at least for a while, and they're like, oh, it's not enjoyable for me anymore, or it's hard, or I'm running good, just know it goes in cycles. I mean, I've been meditating like, I don't know, 35 years or something. And there's been years where I'm like dragging myself to go meditate. And there's been years when I'm I can't wait to sit down. I can't wait to do it, and then years when I had a baby and it was like, what meditation? Where's that? It was in the daily life practice, or it's so just for the people with experience, just know there are cycles. And the thing to know also is like it's ever unfolding. That's the thing for beginners or people with more advanced practice. It's ever unfolding. It's so mysterious. You don't know what's coming next and the next meditation, the next day, the next week, the next year. And that's one of the things I love about it. It does not grow old. It can't grow old because you can try a different type of it. You can explore depth in a new way. Something emerges. Like it's so organic and magical and mysterious. And so we can lose sight of that and just be like, oh, this is road, or I'll never get this right. But if you trust process around it, I think you'll see that it's like an endless source of exploration.
Yeah, I like that endless source of exploration and always showing up with curiosity. There's a lot of things will be revealed in that curiosity. Let's see. Okay. Diana, will you share with us a little bit about UCLA Mindful?
Yes, so I have been at UCLA for the last 18 years. Most of it was at the Mindful Awareness Research Center. And during that time there, I was developing classes and programs and an app and teaching mindfulness to the UCLA community and to the general public. And one of the things I did was I trained mindfulness teachers. So I had a program for 13 years training mindfulness facilitators, and we trained over 600 people who are not traveling, sorry, who are teaching mindfulness all around the world. So I've been in this beautiful position to watch the growth of the field of mindfulness. And we're involved with a number of research studies, and that's been a core part of this work, both the research and the education. Last year, we transitioned to 2 centers. So now we have a research center. The Mindful Awareness Research Center is predominantly research. And then I moved over into the health system. So I'm at UCLA Health, where I'm still teaching the general public, but my new mission is to help integrate mindfulness into the UCLA health system so that we really bring these practices for care providers and med students and patients. So I'm on a little bit of a new track, and it's kind of a wonderful next exploration.
Okay, that's really clarifying for me because I remember us looking at the switch and the shift. And so I really like that about making sure mindfulness is part of just general well-being and health, especially in the West. I think it's often forgotten, or it's starting to become more. But to have an institution that is as large and as influential as UCLA commit to that is huge. Um, so what are some of the offerings or things like, do you have to be affiliated with the university? Can what are some of the offerings that folks can connect to through
Yeah.
UCLA Meaningful?
Sure. So no, I'm still teaching the general public because we've had, community for years. And so there's a lot of what we're doing, actually almost 75-80% of what we're doing is now free, which is incredible to be able to offer it in that way. Yeah. So I teach a free class, virtual online every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. If you want to meditate with me and hear about themes and be in community. I have been teaching for almost 15 years at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. But you can go to, but it's also live streamed. So it's a hybrid event. We have some other virtual drop-ins and live drop-ins in Los Angeles and also virtual. So that's a way to get involved. We have the UCLA Mindful app, which is, again, a free app with lots and lots of meditations. We have meditations in that app in 19 different languages. So you can, yeah, it's gotten really, really elaborate and including like American Sign Language. And it's just like so, I mean, they're not that many. There's only, I think, 5 that have been done, but you can, there's a whole section in Spanish, so you don't even have to speak English to go into the app and learn. And then, so those are the main offerings right now, because those are the kind of ones for the public. And then I'm now in the process of building out programs for the health system itself, which are all under construction, but please feel free to check it out. And then of course, our retreat coming up at Big Bear is a part of our offerings for the general public.
Yeah, thank you for that, Diana. Wow, 19 languages. Yeah, I'm not sure that anyone else has got
Yeah.
anything quite that comprehensive, not that I'm aware of. Oh man. Okay. Again, everyone, anything inspires you, nudges you, please feel free, raise your hand or hop into the chat. And I have a few more just kind of broader, almost kind of nerdy meditation questions.
Okay. Before
Um,
you do it, I'm just going to show you on the app, like some of the
okay.
things that you can, I don't know if you can see it, but you can choose. Oh, yeah, you
Okay.
see, like all the different languages. I don't know if everyone sees that, but so there you go. But go for the nerd questions. Happy to answer them.
Yes. So what is your definition of meditation?
I define meditation as practices that cultivate inward investigation. Okay, so it's very broad, and I see meditation like a giant category that has many things under it. So like sports is a huge category, and there's hundreds and hundreds of types of sports, and those sports are in different categories like water sports or sports with balls or sports, there's many different kinds of sports. Meditation is the same way. It's just a general term and it has different categories and different things under it. So meditations that cultivate concentrations, guided visualizations, awareness meditations where mindfulness falls, meditations that cultivate states of mind like heart states like kindness or compassion, right? So there's so many different types of meditation and they're all great. It's kind of like, which one do you want to do? Which one do you want to focus on? What are you looking for? What are your goals and endpoints?
Jay, you're muted. There you go.
All right, there we go. It was not working for me. Thank you for that, Diana. Yeah, I like that, the cultivating of the inward, and really just finding different ways to, yeah, pop the hood, poke around, look at different things in there, see what's going on. My next question would be, how important is the breath in terms of meditation and other mindfulness practices?
Um, in mindfulness, it's kind of a standard practice in terms of it's a lot of the meditation practices and mindfulness focus on the breath, but it's not the only way to practice. And you can absolutely practice mindfulness without ever paying attention to your breath. However, for most people, it's kind of like one of the easiest ways to do it. And so that's why it's taught. And because the focus on the breath it's what we call focusing on an anchor. The anchor is that which we always return to. As we can stay on the anchor, it develops concentration, calm, ease of mind, well-being, right? So that's sort of why we want to do it. The breath for most people is usually pretty neutral, meaning it's not, you don't like it too much, you don't dislike it. So that's why it's a good thing to focus on. It's also always with us. That's, important. So it's something you can always return to. And it's fairly obvious. It's not always that obvious, but it's a pretty concrete thing to have as your anchor in meditation. Some people, it just doesn't work. For some people, it could work not on a certain day. Maybe you have a cold, and if you try to focus on your breath, you feel, it feels uncomfortable. Or maybe it makes people more anxious. That can happen. So that's why I recommend that there's other things that you focus on, like sounds could be a good anchor. Sensations at your hands or feet can be a good anchor. So any of those can work.
Yeah, the one thing that you mentioned just a moment ago that really stands out is if the breath can be a space that's challenging for folks. And I've definitely heard this before, and people who are wanting to get into meditation, or maybe something has happened or something has shifted. And so the breath can be challenging for them, or it can be activating. And so, yeah, giving them something else in terms of sound, especially, or even the visuals can be really helpful. All right, it looks like we have a question from Sheila. So please, Sheila, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks. Diana, as we practice mindfulness, we become more aware of uh, not only our own minds and what's inside, but also the world. And I took your engaged Buddhism class a few years ago, and I'm wondering at this time, as in many past times, there's a lot of strife and violence in the world. And so, if we want to, as mindfulness teachers and practitioners, address this publicly, is how do we go about that to try to make a difference to help these regions see that violence is not the way to get what they want. Violence is not the way they can feel safe. Violence is not the way to feel secure. Violence is not the way to feel free. I need some guidance on how we can address this.
Well, I will say, Sheila, that I do not have all the answers here at all. I I think that, all of us have all of us can find our place where we can make a difference. And one person's making a difference is not going to look the same as anybody else's making a difference. And so for some people, it's activism, some people it's letter writing, some people it's advocacy, some people it's, there's countless ways to make a difference in the world. And there's a lot of research showing that when we take action, we feel less disempowered and less in places of fear. So just doing things that you feel like are within your ability to do something, right? Because you're not a politician, so you're not out there making, creating a bill in the Senate or something, right? We can't do that. That being said, two things. The mindfulness practices give us the depth of equanimity and peace of mind and heart to take these actions from a centered and clear place instead of doing it out of fear, out of anger, out of othering. This is the power of our practice. All of the things that I said, that's what I did when I was fighting with that person in my family, right? Like I can do that in relation to political figures. I can do that in relation to how I do my own political activism. Some of us give to causes, some of us, are working on the front lines, but who we are is everything, right? The great peace activist AJ Musk said, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. So who we are and what we embody is so key. And that's why these practices, although there's not like a whole kind of, what can I say? What's the word I'm looking for? It's not, we're not seeing a lot of like mindfulness and political action stuff out there, but it is embedded. I think it's really embedded in who we become and how we act. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is I just want to share that I went to a really cool event last night called the Revolutionary Love Tour. And it's by this woman who's a Sikh activist, Valerie Carr. And they're in it's she and a bunch of musicians and performers get on a bus. They have a bus and it's a giant bus and it says Revolutionary Love Tour on the side of the bus. And they're going to like 30 cities and they're doing this event where they're promoting love as a political act. And they're having people tell stories of when love changed their lives. And they're having people it was so cool. They had one of the women who is a founder of Black Lives Matter was on stage with her talking about some of the formative moments when love changed her life and then all the incredible things that she's done since then. So I feel like the movement in our hearts towards love can create humans. She calls them sage warriors, beings who are, we can maybe call them bodhisattvas from our tradition, who can stand up to these forces of challenge and difficulty and violence and greed and hatred that are throughout this world. And so love comes from within us and we cultivate it and we grow it and we do it with wisdom. So it's all connected.
Thanks so much, Diana. One more question related to that, which is, what about staying impartial? Hasn't that been kind of what a lot of Buddhists in the past have done, like Thich Nhat Hanh stayed impartial?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question because I'm trying to think of that famous quote that like, if you don't stand up for anything, that is standing up for nothing or something. What is that? It's a famous quote.
Yeah, it basically, if you don't act, you're supporting the oppressor.
Right, right. So the Buddhists, um, what can I say? There's a long history of pacifism in Buddhism, and also there's a long history of staying out of the fray. And then there's also in Buddhism an incredible history of activists who have stood up for justice. And I could name like 20 of them right now, like Sulak Sivaraksa and Ajahn Buddhadasa and I forget the monk's name who was ordaining trees to prevent the forests from being cut down in Thailand, and Aung San Suu Kyi in the early years when she was standing up against the human rights abuses, and countless Buddhists who did not remain neutral and who acted for peace. So those are more my, I don't know, those are more my like, mentors and the people that I just look up to.
Thanks so much.
All right. Well, Sheila, thank you for those questions. Those are good sort of bow ties to our Q&A session here. So thank you for those. I'll leave a moment here if anyone else has anything they want to add, or Diana, if you have any other notes as we're wrapping up. I'm going to post a couple of links in the chat, just if there are any other wrap-up words before we close out here. So one link will be for UCLA Mindfulness. The other link will be for the retreat that Diana is hosting at BBRC with Booker and also with Fadan, who will lead movement. And you will also get these links and things via email in the next 24 hours or so. Diana, anything to close with before we wrap?
Yeah, just if you could put the link of just uclahealth.org/UCLA mindful. That's like an easier one for people to get to, or I can just stick it in right now. Well, actually, we're never going to end if I can do this. UCLA. Okay, sorry, I'm bad typer. Okay. No, I said a lot, so I don't need to say anymore. It's great to be here. I love your questions, Che, because it got me really thinking, and I really loved, Sheila, your last question, because the time is now for us to act and to do it in whatever way that we feel is within our capacity, that nurtures us and counteracts despair. So vote, everybody, and I will see some of you at the retreat. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Diana. Yes, you did offer and say a lot, all things that were very delicious and juicy and insightful and just really real and really tangible. I really appreciate, your answers and just the energy that you showed up with. And it feels very much like, yes, I do this. Yes, I lead folks through it. And I'm also moving through very real and tangible things in life. So thank you for giving us that fullness. And thank you for just making the space and time too so quickly and before we get into the retreat. So, just in closing, everyone, thank you for your presence and your participation in being here with us today. The retreat that Diana and Booker and Vadan will be leading is called Awakening Mindfulness. And this will be held at BBRC, which is in Big Bear, California, from October 1st to October 6th. We will have the on-land portion as well as online. So if you're not in the California area, or it won't be accessible for you to be on the land at that time, please feel free to register for the retreat and you can still join us in the room via Zoom. So that is the link that was posted in the chat. And again, these links will be sent out via email in the next, 24 to 72 hours. So thank you again, everyone. And for those of you who we can't see necessarily in the room who are on YouTube live with us, please tune in not next week, but the following week on October 2nd. We will have another Q&A session with Trudy and Lisa, who will also be leading a retreat at BBRC in November. So thank you, everyone. Please have a very easeful, graceful weekend. And we look forward to seeing you and hosting you at BBRC. And thank you again, Diana. We greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.